Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah.
And we're back. I hope everyone's surviving the explosion of open editions over on Manifold. It's been fucking crazy over this past week or so. But dude, like, how have you been, man?
Dude, remember I feel like, what was it, a month or a month and a half ago? I was like, I'm getting totally obsessed with these like mints and like open editions and everything. And everybody else caught on too, apparently. And the whole scene is like blowing up. Dude, I've been great, man. There's like, honestly, I feel like the market is slow by like a lot of people's estimations, but there's like tons of like really interesting and fascinating stuff going on like constantly. So, I don't know. I've been good, man. I'm having a good time. I would love to hear your take on the whole explosion of open editions and what that means or doesn't mean.
Yeah, it's wild to see because obviously, like 2021 Nifty Gateway, the same sort of explosion happens, albeit in a slightly different way. I think it could be helpful to kind of just go through a quick little oral history of open editions, like when they actually started, the progression, like the first wave, and like now the what's happening with the second wave and key differences.
Yeah.
For better or worse with the first wave. Does it sound okay?
Yeah, dude. Lay it on them.
So like the actual origin story of the open edition happened, of course, on Nifty Gateway, but it was like all things that really have emerged on Nifty was a proper collaboration with POC. POC came to Nifty Gateway and was just like, yo, I have this idea. They were calling it an infinite edition. But then internally it was just rebranded open edition for that particular drop. The idea just using time and price to see how many editions are actually minted. And August 2020 is when POC released their collection X. And if you go back and you look at that collection, you see that the pricing for like an edition by POC was like reasonable at the time. And it only had like each open edition, I think there's like something like 15 or so different open editions minted around like 5 to maybe 10 editions each, just to give you a sense of like the different energy around like NFTs and crypto art and just like minting anything then. But then fast forward to February 2021, the first $1 million open edition drop on Nifty that I was a part of was with Justin Maller. That was like in the middle of the month. And it was just like, yo, minted hundreds of editions, like at like price point near $1,000 per edition. It was a really, really emotional collection for Justin. And like the fact that it did $1 million was just like, it caused everyone's minds to explode. I think maybe a week or so after that, Trevor Jones came on and his collection that featured the Bitcoin Angel open edition that minted like 3,000 editions and grossed like $4 or $5 million. That was just like more fuel on the fire. And from that February 2021 to March, April, just the insanity of open editions of like multi-million-dollar mints was our actual reality. It was fucking batshit crazy. But then around that April-May mark, everyone kind of just lost their affinity for open editions because everyone was doing it, right? And like the open edition as a form factor, especially for new entrants into the space who haven't like really sold anything on their own, they haven't messed with limited editions. it's sort of a very comfortable release mechanism because you're not expecting a certain number of editions to sell. Just as long as like an edition sells, you're okay. But you're not like pre-minting anything and like not having a sellout and like not minting too few and just like lets the market do its thing. But the fact that like all the musicians were coming in and using it, like the artists, I think by that time were thinking, oh, this is not great. Also, key point, artists at this time were really intensely worried about oversupply. And because there's really only two variables, time and price, used to potentially deter overminting, artists were like, okay, let's make sure that the open editions are short. So like on average, open editions in 2021, in the early part at least, were like 5 minutes each. And they were priced high intentionally so that they would avoid minting too much. But the speculative bubble was just so insane that it like the higher prices actually attracted more collectors because they were taking that more as like a signal of value, as opposed to trying to just keep it limited, which was crazy to see. Around that time, Mad Dog Jones came in and introduced the concept of burns with some of these large quantity editions. But those burns were more manual, is like harder to get a handle on. And since we're talking about 721 mins, like even if you do an on-chain burn, you are not able to reduce like the visible supply on these sites. Like you need to make annotations and like notes that an open edition was part of a burn, and like a certain number of the supply has been removed from the market, but it's not like it's not the easiest thing to tell. So there's issues there. And then like the summer happened, PFP boom exploded. People started to kind of forget about open editions. But then fast forward a little bit to November 2021 with the POC merge that was an open edition, again, like true to what POC had been doing. And it just went crazy. It was like a $91 million drop, tens of thousands of editions. But POC had baked in a natural burn mechanism, the merge mechanism, right? And it did its thing. It wasn't probably as popular long-term as it could have been, but I think that laid the foundation for everything that we're seeing with Manifold and their open editions. Key note that on the POC merge project that was released on Nifty Gateway, POC was also working with the Manifold team behind the scenes to get the mechanism together with the devs at Nifty Gateway. So I think internally Manifold, they saw like what happened with POC merge and the trade-offs with using 721s versus 1155s, and just were able to make tools that made use of 1155s, the better burn mechanics that surround it, easier to see the actual supply reduced in real time if people burn 1155s versus 721s. So that like around the end of 2022, when like a few episodes ago, when we were talking about this explosion of like either free or very low cost mins, like we're talking like $8, like around that time, people started naturally going to Manifold and using their studio minter for those purposes. Cheap, easy to add burns onto, and just kind of like set the groundwork for bigger artists to come in and do things, or for like, as the case actually happened, folks like Lucrece or like Jack Butcher coming in, and after doing these like super cheap or low cost mints, adding a burn element that kind of like sent the project into overdrive. Floors appreciated. People started seeing that, oh, actually there is money in here. And then like this past week, you have someone like Nest Graphics, who's sort of a legend in the space, has a huge following, hasn't released a large collection in a minute. Obviously was part of like the initial open edition wave in 2021 on Nifty Gateway, but really had been playing it more conservative on the supply side for the past couple of years. Come in, use Manifold for the open edition mint at the meme price of like 0.069, and ended up minting like 20,000 mints like grossing a little over $2 million. And now this week, it seems like everyone and their mother is doing an open edition. I mean, Rizzle, you're doing an open edition. Like, there's an open edition for fucking everything.
Even I
And,
got in the game.
yeah. But again, like for the most part, these open editions are cheaper, but like because everyone is also doing a burn here and they're saying that, hey, like you need multiple mints in order to do the burn, like you're multiplying like either in terms of like 5-10 mints, like what may look like a cheap price point, turning it into something that's not that cheap. And then on top of that, the speculation around like reduced supply, the burn is causing like a lot of folks to go in and pay like fine art prices on secondary, at least momentarily, like as the pump happens for some of these individual projects. And it's just like you can see how in the past, like the big criticism for Nifty Gateway open editions, high initial primary price point, ton of speculation, and then like after the euphoria is gone, like a lot of floors just have dropped away. You're seeing that happen like with these manifold mints, and they're getting burned already. And it's just like if this keeps continuing, just the scale of people that get burned will continue. People that won't get burned are the ones that are just collecting for the art, honestly, or some of the mints that don't get minted to the moon, where we're talking about like a couple hundred maybe editions. And then in those cases, you can see like in history, like folks like Grant Yoon, Jack Hido, honestly, even Pac, like any of these artists that had like editions minted in the hundred, like their floors are going crazy. Like Fewocious, like those open editions really do hold value. It's not like every open edition goes to zero. There's a lot of like open edition FUD just trying in broad strokes to say open editions fucking suck. That's not the case either. It's really just a cool tool that has a lot of value that can be used if it makes sense for certain artists, that is just now being completely abused and like used far too often by like everyone and their mother and father and grandma and granddad.
Yeah, dude, with the convergence of some of this tech too, you can see how, and you know, I did a manifold drop in December for like the Rizzle block that I tried to add some utility to. Well, it did add some utility to it. It comes with the GLP file, you know, you can use it and everything. But that was like my first taste of actually minting on something. And I've been in this space for years, man. And I have minted a couple things on a couple different platforms, but I never like really felt super comfortable until Manifold came around and made me feel like I don't know, it hits differently than minting something on Rarible. I'm like, that's their own thing. I'm like, you know, making my own smart contract feels different and like hits different. Like I have like, you know, more ownership and possession of like the back end of things. And I don't know whether or not the difference is mostly psychological or not. It got me in the game and minting for the first time in December. I'm like, dude, this shit is like so easy. Like once you figure it out, if you have like a volume of content, like if you're already an artist, like you could see how people just flood the market with this shit. And especially with like gas prices, what they are like, you know, to walk it back a little bit, man. So I've been like messing around with AI art, which is like a whole nother story. Like, you know, I don't really consider myself an artist at all, but I'm sitting on like a gigantic library of like really cool art I created, leaning on the bots with AI and everything. And so Corpega actually hit me up to be part of their JPEG fam drop and showed me the list of people who were on it. And it's like everybody, man, like all the OGs, like Angie Taylor and Moxera and Robness and WG Meats and like, you know, all the homies. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm on this like real art drop with like real artists who I greatly respect, and I'm like, dude, I gotta produce something for this. And so I hit the AI hard and everything, and was like, actually I used Brookhawk's like an image of Brookhawk's Rizzle block and was like churning it through the AI with like a billion different prompts. And I'm like, I got to pick one for this project, and I have like hundreds now, many of which are like really cool. And so I'm like, you know what? Fuck it, man. I'm like sitting on all this like cool art, just like doing nothing. And I posted some of it periodically and people were like, hey, that's really cool. I would get one of those. So I'm like, whatever. I'll like throw it out there on Manifold. And it's actually, dude, I thought about our conversation about like 1155s and 721s a lot. I was like, fuck it, man. I'm going to make it. It's like art for the sake of art. So I'm going to make it a 721. It'll get its like proper edition number. And it's kind of fun to just put art out there for the sake of art. But you could see, man, like, I'm like, dude, knowing how easy this was, it cost me like $22 or something in Ethereum to put out the smart contract with 721 and everything. And I'm like, dude, if I put it up for 0.005 ETH each. Again, just like, fuck it. It's just art. Like, if y'all like it, you can scoop it up. It doesn't cost much or whatever. Let's just see what happens. And it's I'm thinking to myself, all I got to do is sell like 3 of these to break even on my $22. Like, that's how like low of a bar there is for like real artists to start cranking these things out. And so I'm not, again, don't like take myself or my art like too seriously, and didn't really care if I burned $22 and like nobody bought it or whatever. But I'm like, just sort of walking back to the conversation that you started. I'm like, dude, if you were an artist who has an audience who like regularly buys your art and aren't cognizant about like scarcity or trying to introduce some sort of scarcity, you can see how some of these like young artists or like artists who are just sort of trying to cash in could just crank these things out on like Manifold like so easily, and just sell through the roof as long as the market is there, like scooping these things up. And I don't know, man. I sort of feel like, I've been around long enough. I'm like, dude, I can't bring myself, so sold 40 some Rizzle blocks or something at this moment. My claim closes in a few hours. By the time this podcast comes out, it'll be over. But I'm like, if I didn't care, I could put out another tomorrow and another the next day, another the next day, another the next day. And so I'm sort of like getting a firsthand taste of like the struggle artists are into, who are probably sitting on a ton of dope art, but it feels cheap to just like, oh, cool, a few people bought my art, I'm going to throw another one out the next day, another one out the next day, and just sort of like bleed out the market, and I'm like, my AI Rizzle blocks are like, sort of tongue in cheek or like sort of goofy or whatever. But I also am like, dude, I did put them on like 721s for like a reason. I want them to be like sort of looked at like a real piece of art. And I feel like if you just crank stuff out and just unload things on the market like constantly, it's hard to not say from a collector's standpoint that's like undesirable or like unappealing. Like, I feel like, and not even from a value standpoint, man. Like I have a lot of like in real life art that I've purchased before NFTs were even a thing. And, and they you buy a print from someone and it has like number 21 of 25 on it or whatever. And so, I would buy art like appreciating the scarcity of the art with never any like intention of selling it or like never purchasing it because it was scarce, with the idea in the back of my head, like, hey, I'm going to turn around and like dump this on eBay someday or something like that. Like, I feel like there is something about knowing that you hold something rare or scarce, even if it's like essentially valueless, that is important to people or whatever. So I don't know, man. I'm also of like the other mindset where like some of these collectors, particularly some of the ones you mentioned, are like, I'm priced way out of these people's portfolios and art drops and everything. And for like people who are fans of artists, something like an open edition at like a really low price point is that opportunity to, get that artist in your collection in a way that is actually like obtainable to normal people. And so I don't know, man, I feel like there's probably some strategy where there's like a healthy mix of that, where like, you give people some different access points, but it is, you wonder where like tipping point happens where it's
there's the access point, which is where the open edition shines, right?
Yes.
Like you can use it for so many things, but the best use case is like, hey, like I want this to be open for whomever. That's amazing. Come in, like show up during the event, like make that memory, collect this work for me. Like that's perfect. Where now you're seeing like on a daily basis, just things not every open edition gets minted to the moon, but you're seeing these huge just like supernova mints, right? And it's just like it's awesome initially, but then it's like you see these artists and always now thinking like baking in the burn. There's all this extra post mint work that needs to be done to pacify the folks that are more worried about like the overall supply. How are you going to hoover that up and minimize that and make folks whole? And even if the artist is like, oh, this is just for the art, like if you mint 20,000 editions, it's like, well, that's interesting. And it's definitely something that you're probably going to want to think about heading forward, maybe, probably, right? And it just introduces all these new headaches. So I think one of the things I'm sort of curious to see if this OE mania pivots into is something that, again, like pioneered on Nifty Gateway, like with other artists, the OSF, Slime Sunday, the idea of a blind open edition. So instead of having a totally uncapped mint, having the ability to set like a maximum number of editions that you could mint. So instead of like allowing up to 20,000 plus, maybe you limit it to 500, which is a big number, not the largest, sets you up to do these events heading forward. Also sets you up to probably not have to do a burn, because there's multiple examples of like multi-hundred open edition mints that not only hold like their initial primary value, but like appreciate pretty dramatically. But just giving the artist a little bit more power to control supply, to your point, that will allow them hopefully sooner than later to come back and have more fun. Because artists at the end of the day, like they need to just do them in whatever shape, way, or form that takes. Does that mean being more circumspect? Maybe, and releasing more infrequently if that's their vibe. But then there's folks like Robness who are just like, fuck it, I'm going to mint like a whole bunch of shit right now, or Max Osiris. Put it out there. Folks will do what they want. A lot will sell. Maybe some won't. Whatever. They'll be sitting there for another collector to come and find me in the future. But really just giving more powerful tools to artists to limit the supply with, because for most artists, it makes more sense for them to have more control and to make sure that they don't just like mint a million editions every time they release something.
Yeah. I actually like had that in the back of my mind, man. I put the max supply of the thing that I put out there as for 1,000, because I was like, same thing. I'm like, on the one hand, it would be incredible to sell 20,000 of these things like right off the bat. But on the other hand, like I don't really want to do that. And if there's that type of demand out there, then I'm like, they'll come back for the second one. You know what I mean? If that many people want to get in on something, I got a few that I'll just put out there. But dude, there's a lot of freedom in me doing this too. But also, like, I feel like a lot of artists, like you're saying, or at least some artists like Robness and Max, like are able to have that sort of like freedom to not worry too much about it. If I were an artist doing this and my career hinged on each one of these moves, I'm like, this is like some stressful shit. Like, my work is different, and art is not what pays my bills. And so that gives me the freedom to just be like, fuck it, let's just put some out there, and it doesn't matter at all. But yeah, man, for some of these like career artists, I'm like, these are definitely like really important things to consider, because I think, just to again play the other side of the fence, man, like, I think as an artist, I would think one of their goals or historically goals has been to just get your art out there in as many people's hands as possible, which is why people make prints. And I'm like, you sell 20,000 editions, suddenly that's, like 20,000 people on your Web3 mailing list or something that you didn't have on there before. So there's like certainly some value in just getting your art in the hands of more people and opening up conversations with collectors that you may not have been able to tap into in the future. I don't know, man. It does feel like a fad right now. You know what I mean? I feel like there's a place for this phenomenon, but I also feel like we're going to hit that critical point where we're going to hit like audience fatigue. And if we're not like almost there already, like you said, man, even I got in the game. So I feel like this may be top and it's all downhill from here because I think in all seriousness, there are probably people out there being like, dude, if fucking Rizzle's getting in on this shit too, then we've probably peaked.
Yeah, and like out of this fad, this huge boom, like there's inevitably going to be there's like a huge wave of anti-OE FUD and like artists like just throwing shade on it, right? And collectors alike. But just like what we saw in the first wave on Nifty Gateway, like there is that PFP summer. But during that PFP summer, the first big artists to come back and make use of the OE again were Hackatow with the collaboration with Debbie Harry from Blondie, and Sky Golpe. And they were both using the open edition for what its intended use was. They wanted an open point for anyone to be able to collect, but they also wanted to use it as like a tool, like a criteria to enter extremely limited edition or super rare drawing. So the winners of those drawings would be able to get like a 1 of 1 or 1 of 5 or 1 of 10 work from them, right? So those are artists that are super focused on their markets and their supplies, and the open edition functions as that entry point. So at the very least, people are collecting like a really nice signed edition print from these artists and their collaborators, but then owning that then opens them up to this extra possibility of getting even more like limited edition or super rare work. And after that, then you start seeing at a more like reasonable rate and something that's not like this huge bubble or fad, other artists make use of that in their own way, right? So it is a powerful tool that you can use in so many different ways. And I think that with the open edition mints from the 1155 open edition mints from Manifold and the Burns, I think we're going to see a lot of use cases emerge from here, just like we did before. And the artists are going to keep doing their thing, innovating, playing with the tools, and realizing it unlocks other experiences or avenues for them to continue creating and experimenting within. That's what I'm like most keen to observe and on the lookout for in this open edition madness that we're currently in.
Yeah, man, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in the long run. Probably like similar to how it has been, man, where it sort of comes in waves and everything. But it's cool, man. I feel like we've come back to this point like a few times where like, you know, here we are in what's widely considered like a dead or like a bear market, but the artists are still out here like doing their thing and getting paid for their craft, and that's like something I also like try hard not to judge too much with regards to like these decisions. And I'm like, you know, for me, it's not like a financial decision. There's not like a whole lot on the line with the success or the failure, but I'm like, these artists got to eat, and like, this is their way to put food on the table and everything for their family. So like, you know, who am I to judge someone selling 20,000 of anything, if that's like, you know, the best way they're trying to make a living for themselves and everything. But the convergence of all these tools, man, I feel like is going to, again, like rock the boat on everything. Cause, you know, I think I had mentioned before, man, like, you know, getting deep into a lot of this AI stuff makes me realize how easy it is to create like really high-end dope content. Like if you know how to, you know, manipulate the bot or whatever. And it does make you look at like a lot of this stuff differently, especially with people who I'm not like familiar with, or I don't like know already through the grapevine or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like some artists, have iconic styles, and even if they got like the AI to like recreate it or whatever, it's like identifiable and you like recognize their art and this and that or whatever. But with some of these people like entering the scene who I'm not familiar with, I'm like, dude, like the art is cool, but in the back of my head, I can't help but be like, I know how to talk to these bots now, man. I can like whip up some dope shit that looks just like that. But it's not the same, and I'm not trying to like put it in the same category as like real art, but it makes me look at it like sideways. And I'm like, did you make this or did you get a bot to spit it out? And I feel like there's probably a lot of projects and people entering the space masquerading like they're this incredible creator when in actuality they're pretty good with the prompts. And I feel like that's a valuable skill set to have, but I do feel like it's different, man. It's in like a different category. Like if I'm like buying art from an artist, I like want to know that the artist made it, or the artist is like essentially being upfront about the fact that they like didn't make it, which is like, okay, I guess like in the proper context. But I think there's a lot of LARPing going on out there right now, especially with people popping up.
We saw this back in the day, like 2018, 2019. Like the best example is probably just like the glitch effect for a lot of the
photo mosh.
Yeah, it looked cool. A lot of people were buying it. They weren't really thinking about process and things like that. But then naturally, like the evolution of any collector, it's like, well, actually, how did you make this? You start talking to the artists, and some artists, like they have like a whole process, and you see like, wow, how involved it can be to create the work that they do. But then there is a bunch of artists that were exposed for like photo moshing using like a basic ass filter to add a glitch effect onto. And people are like, what the fuck, bro? Like, makes no sense, like what you've been trying to sell your work for. And again, like certain artists are like upfront about using like everyday tools and throwing it on, like putting something out there.
Robness would be like straight up, which I respected. And he's just like, I photo mosh this trash can. Like, here it is.
They own that shit, and it's part of it. It's that's them as an artist, right? But still being like open and transparent and honest about like who they are and what their art is. Like not all the art's like that, just certain things, right?
Yeah.
But it's the same thing, and you're seeing it now just like with a different tool set. But again, it's the onus is really on the collector to do their homework, right? You're gonna throw money to collect something because you liked it. That's cool, but then don't be upset if you figure out that like what you bought is something that like anyone could create, right? Like if you really care that much, to make sure you do your homework the next time before you pull the purchase button. I mean, that it's really as simple as that.
Yeah. It's the open edition, I feel like, has also brought up the conversation of like, who's actually here for the art, like versus the speculation type of thing. And I feel like that number is very much slanted in the speculators, and always, well, I don't want to say always, because in the beginning there wasn't enough value to speculate on, but I feel like that plays such a huge role in like so much of this now is you get a handful of people who will collect art, just because they want to support the artist or they like it or whatever. But like the 10 handfuls coming behind them are like, can I flip this shit eventually?
Yeah.
Which benefits the artist in a lot of ways too. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but it does produce like sort of a weird economy.
Totally. But you can't say that the shit isn't fun or entertaining. It really is.
It's really fun. I'm excited to see where it all goes, man. I feel like the convergence of like a lot of this tech is like really going to spin off in like some crazy direction soon. I know I've been saying that for a while, but I'm like just fascinated by this AI shit, and like the amount of tools that are easily accessible for like everybody to use, and all these tools are like pretty intuitive and easy to use too. It's just pretty nuts.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for the whip too, like the difference between, hey, we have the whip meetup.eth, send us some funds if you love us, and then some people showing us love, Stella Bell, Brookhock for sure, a couple others, but like not that many people. but then putting out an open edition, be like, yo, grab this, support like whatever we're doing, and you just get way more demand there. I think the insights for non-artists
Yeah.
Are many, and I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing projects like do like open membership runs and then start to kind of reward those initial collectors and use that for token getting purposes and stuff like that, just because you do have that wide berth and you're able to scale so much more, and it's fun and it's something that people can look back on and like remember, and again like have the positive memories associated with them. So excited for all that continued innovation and experimentation with these tools.
Hell yeah, man. Fun times. Good shit, dude. Always fun chatting it up with you.
Oh yeah, man. Well, I guess I'll see you Thursday. We got Vector Melju and the Broadside crew coming through. Excited for those updates. See who we get on the
They got a
DJ
sick build.
set. Yeah, very excited for that.
Dope.
Cool.
Good shit, man. See you at the whip.
All right, brother. Peace.